Today we're going to be making a hooded towel. For this pattern, you'll need 1 1/4 yards of terra cloth fabric or an extra large towel. You also will need 2 packages of bias tape or 4 yards of handmade bias tape. So here we have the pattern pieces. The body piece and the hood piece is only 2 pattern pieces that you need for this pattern. The body piece is cut on the fold and the hood is flat cut. So you just need one of each. One's cut on the fold, the body piece, and the hood is flat cut. Pattern calls for an extra large towel, which is 60 by 30, but I'm going to show you how to use just a regular adult towel, which is about 27 inches across. The first thing I do is fold the towel in half. This way, the finished edges are at the top and they're straight. And then you usually have this pattern design, which I want to put on the hood of the pattern. So I'm just going to go ahead and place the body piece on the fold, and you can see that it's about 1 inch off on each side. So go ahead though and cut this out on the fold. So go ahead and straight cut it. Don't worry about the curved edges right now. Now that we have the body cut out, you're just going to slide the pattern piece along the edge and just cut that curved edge from the corner. And you're going to do that on both sides. I'm just going to take my fabric scissors and I'm going to cut that curved edge, and I'm going to line up the ends of the pattern piece on the edges and cut out those curves. Now I'm going to cut out the hood, and I'm going to take advantage of this woven strip on the towel edges that's called a dobby border to use as a decorative design on my hooded towel. So now you have 2 options. You can cut the hooded towel along the finished edge of the towel, which naturally comes finished, or you can cut it higher up and add your own bias tape. So in this example, I'm gonna line it up where it's a finished edge and cut out the hood. So here you can see that this edge has a finished edge and you don't have to add any bias tape to it. And that's an option if you're using a pre-made hooded towel. I'm also going to show you how to cut it out if you don't want to use the pre-finished edge. And I want to use the dobby border as an accent feature across the hood. Another quick tip is terry cloth makes a lot of mess. So grab a lint roller and you can easily clean up your workspace. Here we have the hood and the unfinished edge. You're going to apply bias tape to the bottom, and you can do that in 2 ways. The first way is you can just simply fold it over the edge and always leave a little bit of extra fabric at the end. We can cut that off. So that's the first way. You go ahead and clip it, sandwich the hood in between the bias tape, and then you're going to just run a zigzag stitch or a straight stitch to secure in place. So start right there and just zigzag all the way down. The second way you're going to apply the bias binding is by opening it up all the way and placing one of the raw edges along the raw edge of the bottom of the hood. And again, leave a little bit of a tail so that you can trim it. So I'm going to go ahead and clip this in place. And then once you have it all clipped down in place, you're going to run a straight stitch along the fold of the bias tape all the way down. Once you have everything pinned in place, you are going to stitch down that fold line of the bias tape and the hood. So go ahead and secure your stitches, and remember we have an overhang of the bias tape. So once we stitch to the edge, go ahead and secure your stitches. And then what you're going to do is you are going to fold the bias tape on the stitching line and then fold it on the center fold around the raw edge of the hood. And it is already pre-folded, so it folds pretty easy around the edge. Let me show you that one more time. So again, fold on the stitching line, fold over the raw edge, and fold on the center fold of the bias tape. And make sure that the folded side underneath is a little bit past the folded side if you want a straight stitch. If you're going to run a zigzag, you're more likely to catch that bottom bias tape fold. But you can do it either way. You can straight stitch in the ditch, or you can run a zigzag stitch across the bias tape. So let me show you what that looks like at the machine. So I'm going to make sure that my bias tape is getting caught underneath, and then you're going to stitch in the ditch. So stitching in the ditch is right along that stitch line in the fold. I'm also going to show you how to do a zigzag stitch. So what you would do is set a zigzag to 3 stitch length and 3 of the width of the zigzag, and go ahead and it jumps back and forth in a wide zigzag down the length of the bias tape. This is a much easier method, and it ensures that you catch the underside of the bias tape. So now we have the hood finished. You're just going to trim the edge of the bias tape even with the raw edges of the hood. So now this is the body piece, and on one edge, it doesn't matter because it's square, you're going to place the hood at the top. So now you can base the hood in place along the raw edge, or you can move to applying the bias binding around the edge. And for this hooded towel, you're going to use the second method that we use with the bias open. Open the bias tape up, completely up, and fold it back a 1/2 inch on the bias, and then place that along the edge of the terry cloth. And then you're going to stitch on the fold line of the bias tape just like you did in the second method of applying bias tape. This is just a scrap piece of fabric. I'm just trying to show you how to finish the hooded towel. So go ahead and stitch down. Now when you're coming to the other edge, you want to go ahead and open up the bias tape. And this is unfortunate, it's falling right on a seam, which doesn't happen all the time, but it doesn't matter. You can just open that up all the way and keep stitching down the fold line and stitch about a 1/2 inch past the folded edge. So now you're going to go ahead and trim that little dog ear that's left from the fold. And then you're going to go ahead and trim off the excess And then you can simply fold it on the fold line in the middle over, just like you did to apply it to the hood. And you can see you have a easy bias seam. That's super easy. And then lastly, you're just going to take it to the machine after you fold it over, and you're going to zigzag it in place, and then you're done. And now you have your hooded towel complete and ready to go.